All right, welcome in Coach Nate Pennington. I'm sorry, hold on. I've already messed this thing up. I'm gonna go ahead and back up. I think we need to do it with a proper introduction. I will never slow up. I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you want to play tough and want to hate this, I always show up and make a statement.
Gotta
Oh
love it.
man, your intros get me the most hype. Those are I'm on my run. I've got my playlist queued, and I'm just going, and I start to hear it. I'm like, oh, slow the pace down, slow the pace down. It's an easy run. Got to keep my easy days
Yep.
easy.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
how you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome. Yeah, Andrew, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with your community, and I admire what you've done in the sport already, and I think you got a great coach with Matt. Already dropping that 302 at Houston last year. That's pretty awesome, and I know you're going to go well under 3 hours, just based on the workouts you're doing and everything. So yeah, it's great to be here, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, little do you know, you were kind of my coach, but you didn't know. Along with Jason Fitzgerald and a couple other guys
Oh
on
yeah.
YouTube in my COVID days when I was first getting
Okay.
into it. I was living on YouTube, and I didn't know anything about running. Didn't run in high school. Didn't run in college. And you guys are producing content, talking about running and coaching. So I'm really grateful for you guys. I had him on the show, and I thought, oh man, I got to get Nate on the show and just talk to him about coaching. So that's
Yep.
mostly what I want to talk about. I also want to talk about your 219 journey somewhere in here. But let's just get the show on the road. So for coaching, I guess what I'm always fascinated with is, I'm a newer runner. I hire a coach. Say I'm a new. How do you get me faster? How do I get faster?
It's a great question. I think coaching, you have to get to know the athlete first and foremost. You have to find out what their background is, of course, because I talk a lot about like faster long runs and very paced long runs, things like that. You can't start a beginner like that. They first have to build a larger, longer duration of easy aerobic mileage, and then you start working on specific workouts and running at faster paces during the long runs, but not the entire long run. And of course, what works for one athlete is not going to work for another athlete. So you have to find out what, is the athlete, of course, adapting to the workouts that they're doing. And if they're not, then you have to also make sure that we adjust the workout. So if the athletes that I coach, if I do a 16-week or a 20 or 24-week buildup, and they're having a very difficult time hitting the workouts, then we have to adjust those workouts, of course. And I go back to my own background with having been coached by some pretty tough, no nonsense type coaches. Jack Hazen and Dr. V Hill, being mentored by that, and Lisa Rainsberger. There were times where I couldn't hit the workouts, and so we just communicate. I mean, really, communication. It comes down to that for sure. Whether you're a beginner or if you're a more advanced athlete, we have to, I try with the athletes that I coach online. I check in with them about twice per week. I go in our coaching platform and make comments and answer their questions as well. And I think just being interactive and communicating with the athlete really goes a long way. I was on a coaching call with one of the athletes I coach. It's a husband and wife team, and they just dropped two massive PRs in the marathon. I was really stoked, but they communicated in our conference call that, hey, it was just really awesome just to be able to go in and see that you wrote that you're doing awesome. Sometimes it's just a courteous word, some kind of, say, hey, I believe in what you're doing. I understand what you're going through. So I think as a beginner, how to get you faster really just comes down to, one, being there for the athlete throughout the training process and making those adjustments as we go. If the training runs are too long, we make the adjustments, but also being there for the athlete. I just really think that's important. So,
And did they meet in a run club? Who wears
uh,
the pants? Whoever got the most recent PB wears the pants. Just for
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, I don't know exactly where they met. But they're extreme. Yeah, they're extremely fired up about the marathon and the half marathon, these longer distances. Um, but
Uh,
yeah, it's really it's motivating for me to see, especially the athletes improving and gaining confidence in what they're doing. surpassing what they thought they were capable of doing. Because I've been there as well. There are times where you doubt yourself and you question what you're doing out there, and you don't have the teammates. Not you don't always have somebody there to do the workouts with you. And so really just having somebody there to hold you accountable, if not in person, being there to take the time to make those comments and, jump on a call if you need to talk, so.
What would be the difference then? I mean, obviously, you're not going to prioritize someone that you're coaching who's been running for a longer period of time or who's faster, right? You're going to spend equal coaching love, to the entire Run, Dream, Achieve family.
Absolutely.
But what nuanced differences would you make in training for somebody who's been running for maybe 7 or 8 years and has some ambitious time goals versus a beginner?
Well, one of the biggest things, I think the pace differences is significantly higher for somebody that's more advanced. The volume, the mileage it's much higher at times. There are some, elite level athletes, national class level athletes that can do much better on lower mileage versus higher mileage. But in most cases, somebody that's more advanced in the sport is going to realize that, hey, if I'm trying to break a 2:30 marathon, maybe running 40 miles a week might not do it. And again, it's how you set up your training. Are you doing 95% of that 40 miles aerobically and 5% anaerobically? If that's the case, you're going to have a very difficult time doing that. I go back and study what the very best runners in the world are doing. And one, they are doing the volume, but they're also doing a lot more, as you know, they're doing a lot more of that volume at a very higher anaerobic type effort. And, I have a guy that I'm coaching right now. He's in the Navy, he's a doctor, and he's trying to break 2:30 at Boston. And the types of workouts he's doing, for example, 6 times 1600 on the track at between 450 and 455. And he's doing between 80 and 100 miles a week right now. So again, for somebody that's a beginner, far too aggressive in terms of coaching. I try to keep those things in mind because, again, you don't want to get the athlete too fit too soon, and you don't want them to overtrain as well. And as you already know, being an athlete yourself, highly competitive athlete yourself, it's a mystery sometimes in terms of how to set up the training properly. Am I doing enough mileage? Am I doing too much of my mileage too easy? Am I doing too much of my mileage too quick? And that's why I always preach, make sure that you keep a log. I wish I would have done that in the past. I really would. And I remember some of the workouts I did, and I do have some of my workouts I've done in the past, but I don't have that log that I wish I would have kept from when I was a 15-year-old in 1992 all the way to now. I could have went back and looked, but in terms of your question, long-winded, in terms of your question though, somebody that's more advanced obviously is going to be able to handle much more volume. Just because they've been at it for a lot longer, and I think they will be able to handle a lot more intensity. But again, it's the same for a beginner too. They can handle a lot more than most, even they realize too. It comes down to the maturity level of the athlete and the background of the athlete. Can they handle more mileage? And what is the percentage between aerobic and anaerobic training that they're doing? And if one is too high, maybe they need to do a little bit less to get better results. So
okay, and I definitely like the idea of journaling. I've always been a person who journaled. Of course, that they turned it into a book, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That was my yeah. I just got to write it down with running. Sorry, I got dumb jokes.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
No, man.
Bearing those out. So you mentioned a few coaches earlier, right? Did you what were the takeaways from those coaches? Do you apply that to your coaching? What are your core coaching tenets? Are you a pace guy? Are you an effort guy? Are you malleable? What's Nate all about?
No, I think I'm more malleable. I think the biggest takeaway I took from all the coaches that, the 3 key ones, even my high school coaches were great too, but, having worked with Jack Hazen when I was at Malone University, and Dr. Joe Vigil, working around with him and being mentored by him. I wasn't coached directly by him, but I was mentored by him because Coach Hazen and him were so close. We were always around him. And then also with Lisa Rainsberger. Lisa won the Boston Marathon in 1985. all the key takeaways I took from all of them is just patience, because we're not in a sport where you get quick results. You don't go from being a slow runner to a great, or fast runner overnight. And the mistake I made, like every other runner, is we want quick results, and we want to see the results. We want to see the fruition of all of our hard work. We want to see those results take place. And sometimes the results take much longer than we realize. And, I think that's something that, as a coach, thinking back to my own experiences and the things that I was throwing at myself, like just mental and physical pressures that we throw on ourselves. A lot of times just you got to learn to enjoy the sport. Give yourself time to adapt to what you're throwing at yourself in training. And if it doesn't take, if you don't get your result in 6 months and you get it 4 years later, but you eventually get to that state where you get in that flow state and you finally achieve it, you're going to forget all of the bad times. You're going to remember that all the trials and tribulations and the ebbs and flows that you dealt with over the years to finally get to that point. And the key thing to remember is, did you get to that point? Did you finally get to it? And, in some cases it can take a few months. Sometimes it can take a decade or more. So patience is really, really important in this sport. Whether you're an 800-meter athlete or you're training for a marathon or an ultra marathon, if you have that tenacity, believing in yourself and knowing that, hey, what I'm trying to do is not easy. So if I'm tenacious enough and if I'm persistent enough, I'm finally going to get to what I want to do. So I can't stress that enough. But in terms of those coaches, patience was key. And I was surrounded by some great athletes too that really took me out of my comfort zone. And a lot of times I had one athlete, I won't name his name because I don't want to put his name out there, but when I was a 2:43 marathoner, he had told me, he said, if I were you, I would quit. And this particular athlete, high level athlete, ran for the University of Arkansas. And, at that time, I was trying to break a 2:22 marathon, and he told me to quit. He said, at this state, at this level, you're not going to ever compete at the national or at the elite level. So you have to get beyond those times where people throw their viewpoints on you. And again, that comes back down to being tenacious about what you want. How long are you willing to put in the work in order to get what you want? And if I would have quit when I heard that, or if I would have let up, I would have never broke 220.
All right, well, that's a good transition. I do also want to talk about that. I know you reference it a lot in your videos as a qualifier, not as a flex. You're not just trying to flex on the people. You're like, hey, this is where I started. This is where I got to. I know my way around. Now, you ran a 2:19 marathon. You're a 2:19 guy. Where did you run that? In what year did you run that?
I ran that in 2007, so it was many years ago. But I ran that at the California International Marathon. I had, and this is for those of you that are watching too. I didn't just get to that point, so I always stress that I had a lot of setbacks over the years. I had a lot of times where I ran much slower. I had DNFs. I had times where I ran over 3 hours, which is still extremely fast. I just don't want people to think that, hey, this guy ran a 2:19. He's got a lot of talent. That's not what I don't necessarily believe that. I think it's important to also be humble enough to realize and to openly state, and I'll definitely do it. I got beat several times over the years in high school, college, on the roads after, post-college. But yeah, going into that race, my PR was 2:40.02. I had run 54 for 10 miles and a 107.06 for the half marathon going into that race, but my best marathon was 2:40.02. The workouts I was doing leading into that were much different than what I was doing in, say, like 2002 when I first started running the marathon. Again, Lisa, I started working with her when I was a conditional athlete as a part of the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program. I got accepted into that program conditionally in 2007, and Lisa, she was assigned my coach. And so one of the biggest types of changes that I made for my long runs especially was not just running slow and easy. There is a place for that, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a place for long, slow, easy long runs. You want to build that endurance, but that change from going to faster long runs is what Lisa taught me. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I was able to go from 240.02 to 219.35. And again, it's just like every other athlete, whether you're a beginner or you're more advanced. I can't say to not persistence. Just believe in what you're doing. You obviously have that characteristic. Everybody that's watching this, if you're taking the time to watch this video, we all have it. It's ingrained. It is ingrained in us. Some of us, like you said, some of us start later in life, later in the sport, do phenomenal things. Other athletes start much earlier and then work their way up. Some athletes start much earlier and never get to the point what you've already dropped. But those types of things I keep in mind in terms of openly mentioning those in videos and things like that. Just say, hey, yeah, I ran 219, but it was not a smooth sail.
A long time coming. Now, you mentioned some times that you were running before at other distances, and for something like the VDOT calendar, what would that half marathon that you ran in indicate what you were going to be able to potentially run in the marathon? And did you exceed those expectations? Did you surprise yourself? Like in the middle of the race, were you like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm holding it. I'm not fading too bad, or were you running outside of yourself, or was it in alignment with like the VDOT says?
Yeah, that particular day, yeah, it was almost, because even though it was, a long time ago, it still feels like yesterday that I did that. But yeah, what you mentioned, it was almost like I was definitely in a flow state. There was no question about it. I hit the half at 107.09, and that was 3 seconds off my personal best to this day for the half. We hit the 10-mile mark in 51.27. Half of 107.09, 20-mile mark at 144.05. So I knew at that point, because I remember hearing the support folks out on the course saying that 5:11 pace. So yeah, it was just, I was able to hold I was with a group of Kenyans. Two of them ended up getting first and second. There was a Canadian who finished in third in front of me, and then a Ukrainian from Russia behind me finished fifth in 2:23, and he was a 2:12 marathoner himself. So I think the VDOT calculator, it does give a decent guesstimate. I think for my PR 107.06, I think it states that my time would have been around a low 2:21. So it's close. But yeah, when I was in college, my PR was 113 for the half, and never really considered running a marathon until 2002. I got called by I was in my first duty assignment with the Army at Fort Carson, Colorado, and the sports specialist at the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program called me up and said, "Hey, we're going to send a team to New York City to run. You're going to start in last place. Can't start the race until every runner had crossed the start line." And he said, "Yeah, we'll put you up, and we're going to put you up in the plaza. Do you want to do it?" And at that time, I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." At that time, my 10-mile PR was 53:21, and I'd never run a marathon, so I'm like, I'll give it a shot. So
Cool. And what shoes did you wear? Do you remember what shoes you wore for that marathon, the CIM?
I wore actually a pair of 3K, 5K Adidas Adi Zeros. So they were not the shoe for a marathon runner. I still have them to this day. But yeah, it's looking back, I can't believe I dropped that in those shoes. Yeah, it's the shoe technology, as you know, is drastically changed today. But even the shoes, the super shoes and that topic is real vibrant in the running community. But even the super shoes, they're not a guarantee either. You can do everything right. You know this. You can do everything right in training and still not get it right on the day. And sometimes you have to, again, that's why I'm write down what you did and see if you can make some adjustments along the way. But yeah, that day I was wearing a pair of, they were more like 5K flats for the track.
Yeah, no, I think you're good for at least a couple more minutes in 2025 if we do the translation. We
Yeah.
we translate for inflation or whatever it is. All right, so Then what was the OTQ qualifying time back in 2007? Were you flirting with making the Olympic trials with that kind of time?
Yeah, back then it was the trials were held. The 2008 U.S. Olympic trials were held in November of 2007, and so back then the Olympic trials B standard time was 2 hours and 22 minutes flat. The A standard time, so if you got the B standard, you could go and compete. If you got the A standard, USA Track and Field would fly you out, put you up in the hotel. But yeah, the 222 was the B standard, 220 flat was the A standard, and this is another example for the viewers, the importance of, hey, don't stop if you don't get to your goal the first time, because what I want to also state, even though I ran that 219 in December of 2007 at the Sim Marathon, let me see, in October. When was it was in October at the Chicago Marathon in 2007. A few months prior to Sim, I ran 251 and failed there. I ran 211 through the half. It was the hottest year of the hottest race in Chicago. They actually stopped the race. I think it was about in 4 hours in, they stopped the race because it was so hot. But yeah, I failed, miserably in that for me that day, because I was trying to break 222, and the U.S. Army flew me out there. So, it was a failure in that particular day. But 3 months later, I ran the 219. So be persistent, folks. Be persistent. Don't let up. You're going to experience this. You're going to experience doubt. You're going to experience times where you want to quit, where you don't come close to what you're aiming for. It's just a matter of continuing on to what you're doing, and it may come in a year down the line. It may come another 5 years, but it'll happen because you have the drive and motivation to do it.
Recently, I've been watching the channel. I still watch it. I still get hyped on my easy runs, and I just like to I like to just, I don't know, let it marinate, and just be around running stuff, good reminders. You've always got a lot of wisdom to share and stuff. So recently you, in a way, came out of retirement and you started running. You haven't been running marathons in the last, 10 or 15 years to my knowledge, but you decided to start running that distance again. What was the motivating factor for that? What was the moment that inspired you to want to run the marathon again?
Yeah, it's been a little over 11 years, and I wanted to qualify for the World Masters Marathon Championships. They're being held this year at the New York City Marathon, and so I started training for that in November of 2023. I started the first run I ran with my nephew Brock, and I pretty much trained from November of 2023 all the way up until late 2024. That was the main reason. I just figured, I wanted to give it a shot. I knew I was probably asking far too much out of myself, because the minimum standard was 242 for a 48-year-old to qualify. And even if the goal would have been 3 hours, I think that would have been a stretch as well, just based off of how much time I've been away and how fast a sub 3 is. But yeah, I gave it a shot, and I think that sometimes just instead of saying I wish I would have tried, at least tried, is more important. And you're gonna succeed sometimes, and you're not gonna make it sometimes. So in my case, I did get very fit. But I think the buildup was too long too, in my opinion. I think I was training for a little over a year straight. I did have some small breaks along the way, but in September I did a 10-mile tempo, or 10-mile time trial. Actually, it wasn't a tempo, in 54:50. And really, I wish I would have ran the marathon about 2 weeks after that, and instead of waiting until Philadelphia. I went to Philadelphia, DNF'd there, dropped out at 16 miles. Just body shut down on me. Also, I think it was in November, I went to Delaware, and again, had to call it a day at 19.2 miles. So it's not a good feeling to DNF. Of course, I've had 3 of those in my entire career. 2 of them, obviously, this past year. But again, I gave it the best I could, and I wanted to at least give it a shot. 242 at any age is tough. And even breaking 3 hours at any age is very, very tough. Very few athletes do that. So, it was fun though.
No, absolutely. And I think To me, in a way, it's very relatable, and even my journey, or like somebody like Kafuzi,
Oh
who's
yeah.
like, trying to break sub 3 for 5 attempts, or Matt Fox trying to break 220 for
Yep.
5 attempts. I'm well above probably sub 3 shape now, but
Oh yeah.
it would be like attempt number 5, so
Yep.
yeah, it kind of reels people in because they start rooting for you. And then the person who just sets a goal online and then hits it. Now, okay, it's up 3, it's up 250, checks up 240, checks up 230. It
Yeah.
starts being like the Chiefs. Then everyone starts rooting against you. It's like I can't relate because you set a goal and you hit it every time. And most of us, we fail along the way.
Absolutely.
And when you hear stories about people who achieve these really great times, a lot of times it's just this particular day they took a chance, they did something they didn't normally do. They attached themselves to some other runner and they started running at pace they didn't normally think they could maybe hold, and they were able to actually hold it. They surprised themselves and they got the time. But you
Absolutely.
can't do that without taking the risk, and you got to go for it. And so, I love that. I'm not afraid of failure. I don't look at, any failures as
Love it.
like, oh, like for me or whatever, all this stuff. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, cool, I can learn from that. So looks like I overcooked it in the training last time, so maybe I'll kind of ease into it this time. So kind
Yeah.
of see if I show up a little bit less, how it goes. And so, I mean, and that's why I kind of, relate to that journey too. It's a journey that is more common. So,
Absolutely. Because it's not a. I think that a lot of times athletes they'll see these fast times and it's very hard to duplicate an extremely tough time. If you go out and you set a PR, you may not get a new PR for another 5 years. It may take you another, in some cases you may cut a few seconds off. Any day you get a PR is great, but the fact that we can go out and do something that a lot of people don't necessarily have the capability at times to do. We have our health, we have family members that support us. We have other things in our life that keep us motivated. But yeah, the fact that it's not always perfect, and I think too being humble enough and being vulnerable enough in your training and in my case making videos and such, I think it's important to let the viewers know that hey, I get what you're going through. I've been there and I understand too. It's a process. So
and so, do you have any room currently? Are you taking on any new runners?
I am. I coach. I do coach about 8 athletes actually right now online. But of course, I am open to coaching more athletes, and it's a great experience too. Like I said, I'm able to interact with them on a weekly basis. And some athletes just want like a training plan or a running course. They want to go A to Z, how to get through a marathon or how to run a faster half marathon, things like that. In some cases, I do the best I can to answer every single comment, as you know, with having your own YouTube channel. Just being there and answering every single comment I get. Emails I get emails I always respond to because again it's community. It goes far above what we do as runners, and and even what you've done. I'm really impressed with what you've done with your channel and watching your vlogs and seeing you out there training and running and giving your own background and experience too. And also the fact that you've started, like you said, midlife runner. I love this. The fact that you started later in life and what you've already accomplished is impressive. It truly is, and I think what you're doing is awesome too, and getting the word out, and it's going to motivate other athletes as well. So yeah, I commend you for what you're doing too, Andrew.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Where can people find you?
I'm on YouTube, just youtube.com/RunDreamAchieve, and then my main website is RunDreamAchieve.com. That's mainly where I'm at. I'm not really on Facebook or Instagram. Nothing against those platforms.
Nobody's on Facebook anymore.
Yeah, it's changed, man. It's changed. Yeah.
All
But no,
right.
I
And then,
just enjoy YouTube.
did you ever run Boston by chance?
Never ran Boston. My wife ran it in 2008, and she was awesome too. Man, she dropped. I'm more impressed with her than anything I ever did. But she ran a 3:21 and then won a 50-mile race in Chicago as well. So she's now me and her now are just more like we walk and jog for general fitness now. But yeah, she ran 2008. But yeah, I never ran Boston, but I was awesome to be there and experience what she went through and all the other runners, of course.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know Boston's coming up. I'm training for Boston. Was going to say a
Okay.
lot of people
Yeah.
tuning in. If you have any pro Boston tips for, the course or anybody, running it. So,
Yeah, no, I do know it's hillier. I mean, it's a net downhill course similar to a sim. I do know that, but just because there is some downhill sections on that first half, man, just be careful on that. But again, some athletes will do much better doing a positive split. They'll go much faster and PR than versus going out in a negative split. And a lot of times, it's so hard, as you know, it's harder to go out in a negative split and hold back a little bit and then try to make up the pace. But yeah, that's awesome. You picked a great race for sure. That's the place to do it.
well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I appreciate
You
it.
got it.